First of all, I'd like to say that this will be an information-heavy lesson. There are a lot of typography terms we'll go over. So if you're tired, I suggest taking a pause for now and coming back when you're ready to soak up some new terms as a sponge. Don't worry though, you can find all of these terms in the Buttons PDF that you received with this course, so you can revisit them whenever needed. You're still here? Perfect. Let's get to it then. A character is a general term for letters, numbers, punctuation marks, and other typographic symbols. Characters are conceptual rather than graphical, so basically a lowercase a describes a character. A glyph is a graphical representation of a character, and a single typeface may contain multiple glyphs for a single character. Here's an example of two glyphs for G in two different typefaces. A ligature is a single glyph that represents two or more characters. They are most often created because the respective glyphs for the individual characters do not look good in close proximity. So if two glyphs in the font you're using don't look good next to each other, it's smart to check if there's a ligature available you can use instead. A typeface or a font family is a collection of glyphs, typically including one glyph for each character, in each of several different weights and forms. It represents the whole family of characters, regardless of size and style, that share the same design features. A font describes a set of characters within a typeface that share a style. It is possible to have many different fonts for a given typeface. For example, Helvetica is a typeface, while Helvetica Bold is a font. The term font is much more popular than typeface. There's nothing wrong with using a common term that everyone understands, especially if you're communicating with clients or non-designers. You should use the correct term when talking with other designers, though I often use the terms interchangeably, but I know a lot of designers who like to point out when you use them wrong. Type superfamilies consist of subfamilies from two or more type classifications. Some also feature greatly expanded character sets and alternatives. In typography, by type color we don't mean the actual color, we mean how heavy a black typeface looks on a white background. Some typefaces are naturally heavier than others. Let's analyze these typefaces. You can see how all of them are set to the same height and weight, but they feel heavier and skinnier based on their type color. We need to take that into account when working with different typefaces. Weight is the thickness of a font stroke, representing how light or bold a text appears. Some typefaces have more weights while others might just have one. The best typefaces have 5 or more weights. The scale goes from thin to black, although that may vary. As a designer, you can use weight to add or remove contrast as needed. Width is the result of how much horizontal space is taken up by typeface's characters. A condensed type takes up considerably less space than a wide one. It's not as common as weight, but some typefaces do come in different widths. The scale goes from ultra compressed to extended, but that varies as well. The width can also be referred to as proportion. On the other hand, I like to use proportion in the context of a glyph width. Proportional fonts have glyphs of varying widths, unlike monospace fonts. But most often, if a designer talks about proportion, they are referring to the width of a character in relation to its height. I mentioned stroke as I was explaining the weight. It's the description of the main marks of lines that make up the appearance of a character. When we talk about contrast, we're referring to the difference between the thinnest parts and the thickest parts of the stroke. Vertical strokes are also referred to as stems. Stress, on the other hand, is the thickening of curved strokes and the position or angle of this thickening in relationship to the vertical axis. Basically, it's the angle at which equal widths of a curved stroke sit. Serif is a small decorative extension at the end of some of the strokes in a letter or symbol. It helps divide all typefaces into two main categories, serif and sans serifs, those with and without serifs. Remember this, as it will be crucial for our next lesson. I won't spend too much time explaining in detail the type anatomy, as it's visually presented on the screen, and that's the best way to learn it and have it click. As designers, we sometimes have to refer to particular elements of a glyph, and the best way to do it is to know what some strokes or spaces are called. Don't worry about memorizing all of this, you will rarely have to name these elements like this, but it's good to be aware of the naming conventions, and you can always revisit this whenever you need it. Crossbars connect two separate lines in a capital letter. A stem is a primary stroke in a letter form. Bowl is a curved close stroke. Apex is a point at the top of a character where two strokes meet. An aperture is an area partially enclosed by a letter form. Descender is a downward vertical stroke that extends below the baseline, the line on which most characters sit. Ascender is the upward stem part of the lowercase letters that extends beyond the mean line, height of the most lowercase characters. Bar is a horizontal stroke. Crotch is an acute inside angle where two strokes meet. Loops appear in the double story G. It's the enclosed or partially enclosed counter below the baseline. Terminal refers to the ending of a stroke. Bowl terminals are a combination of a dot and a curved hook. Shoulder is the rounded part of the letters, for example R, M, or N. Hairline strokes are very thin strokes. Overshoots are parts of letter forms that extend above or below the vertical dimensions of letter glyphs. Arcs are curved parts of letter forms leading into a straight stem. Counters can be closed or open areas enclosed by the letter. The arm is the horizontal stroke on some characters that does not connect to a stroke or a stem at one or both ends. Beak is a decorative stroke at the end of an arm. Foot is the part of a stem that rests on the baseline. Tail is the descending stroke, often decorative. Link is a stroke that connects the top and bottom bowls. An ear is a declarative flourish, usually on the upper side of the bowl. Spur is an accent, it's the piece that extends from a curve in a letter. With this course, you also have the access to the glossary PDF called All About Typography we prepared. It contains all these terms for easy reference later on. Tittle is a small mark over lowercase I and j. It can also be called a dot. The spine is the main left to right curving stroke in lowercase and uppercase s. Leg is the lower downsloping stroke. I is the closed counter of a lowercase e. To ensure that all characters work together well, a typeface is usually designed around a framework of horizontal lines, mostly invisible to the viewer. Cap line is the line through the tops of capital letters of a typeface. Ascenders can go beyond that line. Baseline is the imaginary line upon which a line of text rests. Most letters sit on it and descenders extend below it. It's the most stable axis along a line of text. Baseline is an important term to remember, and I will be mentioning it quite often in this course. Cap height marks the uppermost part of capital letters. It is the distance from the baseline to the top of the capital letters. It determines the letter's point size. X height is a relative unit for measuring the proportion of lowercase letters, creating consistency. It is the height of the main body of the lowercase letter or the height of a lowercase x, excluding ascenders and descenders. It is an important aspect to consider when selecting typefaces, as those with a higher x height are often more legible at smaller sizes. Mean line is the imaginary line at the top of the x height. As I already shared, overshoots and overhangs are the curves at the ends of letters that hang slightly above or below the vertical dimensions of a flat glyph. Without it, rounded letters would look smaller than their flat-footed counterparts. Ascender line defines the top of lowercase letters. Descender line defines the bottom of lowercase letters. Diacritics are small marks that appear above or below glyphs, usually to alter pronunciation. They are required in many languages, and we must ensure that the typefaces we are using include the diacritics we need for the projects. Readability is the arrangement of fonts and words in the order to make the written content flow in a simple and easy-to-read manner. Readability is all about the reader. It is the ease with which a reader can successfully decipher, process, and make meaning of the text. Readable typography encourages a desire to read the words, and it reduces the effort required to read and comprehend the material. Which one of these two sections are you more likely to want to read through? Legibility refers to how easily distinguishable the letters in a typeface are one from another. Kerning is the adjusted spacing between individual letters or characters. As a UI designer, you might only kern glyphs in large display titles. Kerning is a lot more used in graphic design than in UI design. Letter or character spacing is the spacing between glyphs applied to an entire piece of text. This is also called tracking. More often than not, you will not need to tweak it from the defaults, but in some practical lessons, I will show you when it's crucial to change it. Line height is the vertical distance between two lines of type, measured from the baseline of one line of type to the baseline of the next. Line height matters because it affects readability. If line height is too large, there's too much white space. The text looks awkward. If line spacing is too small, letters appear squished together. Paragraph spacing is the spacing between paragraphs of text. In UI design, it should be smaller than a line height, so you can't fit an entire line of text in between paragraphs. Font styles can be normal, italic, and oblique. Italic is usually a slightly right-slanted style of a typeface. It doesn't have to be slanted though. It's commonly used in web typography to emphasize key points, book titles, or quotes. It is the most often separate yet complementary design with unique features and frequently different character weights. Obliques, on the other hand, are simply slanted versions of their Roman companion, with no major design differences other than their angle. If professional typography is your goal, stay away from any fake or computer-generated obliques. Lettercase in writing is a distinction between upper and lower cases. The purpose of this differentiation is to make reading easier. Uppercase or all caps writing only uses the capital letters. Lowercase represents the uncapitalized letters. Small caps uses uppercase letters scaled to the same size as lowercase letters. This is technically not a case transformation but a substitution of glyphs. Take a look at the example on the screen. Some of them use small caps and the other does not. Which example looks more balanced and sophisticated? The small caps one. It's a small detail, but it really shows how a designer cared about even the smallest details. It's important not to use fake small caps though, as the fake ones look too light and incorrect next to uppercase letters. Let's close off this lesson with font formats. TrueType is a more limited format of a font file. OpenType is a more robust format of a font file with multi-platform support, expanded character sets, and glyph substitutions. You can often choose if you'd like to include ligatures or not, switch to small caps or contextual alternatives, and so much more. If you have to choose between the two, as a designer, I'd always go with OpenType. It gives you more flexibility with your type choices. Web Open Font format is used in web pages. It is essentially OpenType or TrueType with compression and additional metadata. The goal of a web font is to support font distribution from the server to a client over a network with bandwidth constraints. And that's it. Congratulations! I know it was a lot of new information to take in, but don't worry. You can always revisit this video if you're unsure of what one of the typographic terms means. Or, as I already said, you can use the PDF you got with this course as your handy cheat sheet.